So maintaining the focus on the beginning of your careers, I wanted to ask if any of you struggled with imposter syndrome, and if so, how did you tackle it? Or maybe if you still feel that way now sometimes, how you're working towards tackling it.
I don't mind. Actually, I said I don't mind, but I actually don't know what I'm going to say. I suppose in my current role, because I'm teaching as a PhD student, there's some level of feeling a bit of imposter syndrome, because you feel like until you've got a doctor in front of your name, the students aren't going to quite treat you with that same level. But and also just, always thinking about, if it's a quiet classroom, should I be engaging in a different way, things like that. So, but I think what really helps is just constant reflection, so kind of speaking to colleagues about different strategies they use, different tools. I guess, sorry, you did ask about earlier in my career, so I don't know, I think because I began with being editorial assistant, that's pretty much the most basic role that you can have on a magazine. So the stereotype is that you're making teas, and yeah, you are. But I think if you're just enthusiastic about everything, people will want to give you more things to do. It's like, oh well, Carinya, do you mind like writing this short bit of news or something, or do you mind doing this? And if you're enthusiastic, they just keep giving you more things. So yeah, I don't know that I had imposter syndrome at that point, but maybe later points in my career, like when I started working at the 5th floor at the BBC, and I was asked to do some production shifts on the social media pages, and I'm like, okay, I've got the BBC Africa login account for Facebook and Twitter, and I just felt like so much power. I was like, doesn't anybody want to check my tweets or posts before I send them out? It just felt like, okay, it's a bit of a, kind of throw you in the deep end. But yeah, so I guess it's just, there have been moments like that, but I think just talking to other people who are in a bit similar position or have been there before, often they're really reassuring. Yeah.
I think, so I kind of started technically working when I was like 15-ish, but alongside education. And at the time, I remember someone at the organisation that I was at saying that, like, you're going to go into spaces and there's going to be people who will have got a connection because their uncle works there, and they probably are going to get a job. So your job is to have a little look around, work out who like the kind of power players are, be really kind of like work really well with the people that you're around, but try to find a way to make yourself indispensable. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I had work experience at the Mirror, and I was basically alongside the letters editor and the kind of, I can't remember what they call them anymore, but like the voice of the day, I think it is. So like the lead writer for the paper. And so sure enough, I could hear like the royal editor like listening to voicemails, and then also I could like go into like the briefings, morning briefings, and see kind of what was going on there. But I could see that there was like little things that just weren't happening that I thought maybe I could maybe add a bit of value. So there was definitely a little bit of kind of like influencing in a way that didn't feel probably too pushy. But as a result, I was able to get a job for like a day a week there. And that's when I kind of realised, okay, there's definitely something, that she was right, and there's definitely something in kind of finding a way to navigate that workplace, because that will definitely help. Going forward, though, I would say I do suffer from it, really. Even now, I think I'm generally I think of myself as quite a shy person, so I find kind of rooms like this terrifying. But I obviously know that there's like loads of people that are like really lovely and wanting to kind of hear maybe what I've got to say, so that kind of helped. But I might be in loads of other rooms where it feels a little bit more terrifying. And I'm also sometimes the most senior person in that department. So it is really, I do struggle with it. It is really difficult. I have to kind of speak to myself a lot in meetings, because I kind of know that I'm sitting there, I'm often the only person that looks like me in many ways. And also sometimes the only person that can add something of value. So I think the thing that I always try to think about is like, I'm always kind of like talking to myself about what I think I want to say. So that kind of makes things a little bit easier. But then the other thing is just having some trust in what you're saying, because actually what you what you often say can add a lot of value to a conversation. So I remember once having a conversation with a commissioner, and he said that you're like a bullet, and I was like, oh, that's a bit rough. But what he said is that every time you speak, there's something that you're saying that's quite impactful, and I think it's because I probably I don't speak too much sometimes, so I kind of choose what I've got to say, and I'm really kind of trying to consider everything that I could say at that point, watching the dynamics of the room, seeing what someone might not have picked up on, seeing how something's phrased that someone else in the room agrees with, and trying to find a way that if I speak, I might be heard in some way. So that's kind of helped a little bit. But yeah, often the other side is just being around a lot of really talented people as well, because then you feel like you're around your peers, but everyone's got their own strengths, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's lifelong, to be honest. I think every time that what I feel like now is that there's still so many rooms or types of work that I step into, and I'm like, I've never done this before, and these people are so impressive, and I feel totally unqualified to even be sitting talking with them. But I think that is kind of also a sign that you're not to diminish it. It can be really difficult, and it sometimes can feel kind of stultifying, but it also is where you're developing and learning, because if you're not in spaces where you feel a little bit out of your depth and you're in listening mode and really trying to understand the wavelength that everyone else is on, you're not in a way pushing yourself that much. So now I'm just I guess I've tried to talk with myself a lot over the last few years to get to a place where I see it as if I feel scared, if I'm hearing things I've never heard before, if I feel do I definitely have to contribute here, I'm probably also learning stuff, and maybe it takes 6 months for that stuff to kind of get through, or even longer, but you will develop that way.
Yeah, I was thinking about, I think as a working class kid that was into weird stuff, I was always a outsider anyway. I was really supported. I had a lovely family that would encourage me to do whatever I wanted, but I don't really feel like I felt any more like I was an imposter going out clubbing with my cousins than I was going than I was going into. It felt normal for me to be going, oh, don't say that, do say that, in whatever circumstances I was in. But having said that, I definitely remember a point of realising how naive I was when everyone else I knew that was trying to be an artist like me had parents that could financially support them, or had some other means of financial support. And so that was definitely a moment of crisis for me, of going it's not just follow your dreams. There's also a load of material kind of support that you need. So that was quite jarring, and that's when I felt really stupid, I guess. And then the other thing I felt is, for me, it's not it's little things, no one in my family went to meetings as part of their jobs. So things like that, everyone goes oh yeah, we're having a meeting, and we all know what a meeting is. And I'm like, I've heard about these things called meetings that people in seats go to. And obviously it's not that, but there's these little things that feel obvious, that are much more where I feel much more I'm pretending that I know what's going on, even now, I think.